Hello, my name is Julia Sheehan. I'm a senior at Eagle Ridge Academy, and this is my portfolio for the Fine Arts Scholarship. I will be showing you 14 different pieces in a range of mediums that I've completed over the past few years. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy.
This is a self-portrait. It was graphically designed. One thing that challenged me about it was the idea of abstracting a face and knowing which parts I should keep and which parts I should maybe take away. And one thing that I like about it is the color scheme and how I did well in my first try. This is a band poster. It's graphically designed and it was printed on a risograph print press. One thing that challenged me about it was the designing it on layers and not knowing how it will actually turn out till it's actually printed. And one thing that I like about it is the detail and the whimsical style, which is not my usual style. This assignment was to create a mini magazine on something that you're interested in, so I chose the 1970s. One thing that challenged me on this assignment was the amount of pictures that I had to find and getting them to fit well in the margins that I had set. And one thing that I think I did well was the general aesthetic and the mood of it. When I read it, I feel like I'm being transformed into the 70s and put kind of into that world, and that's really what I was going for, and I think I achieved that. Now moving on to the ceramics pieces. This piece is called Honeycomb. It's made out of clay and glaze. One thing that challenged me about it was painting all the really small details and it just being a lot of tedious work. But one thing that I really like about it is how the colors turned out and how the stamp actually ended up getting very clean and clear lines so that the honeycomb pattern is very apparent. This next piece is called Moth Pod. It is a ceramic pod that was pit fired, and that's why there's that variation in colors on the outside. One thing that challenged me about this was finding some inspiration in nature when there's so much to choose from. I finally landed on a moth and kind of ran with that, mimicking the patterns on a moth's wings on the side of the pod. One thing that I like about it is that it is more abstract, and I think it's just very interesting and pleasing to look at. This piece is a reflection mask made out of clay and glaze. The assignment for this was to find something about your personality or your character, and it could be an internal struggle or something you're really proud of, and the assignment was to interpret that and put it on a ceramic mask. In this mask, I display the internal struggle that I have between my faith as a Christian and the side of me that is very strongly a feminist, and the struggle that there can be between those two, and just figuring that out in my life right now. One thing that challenged me about it was glazing the small details and just that being very tedious work, and figuring out a subject matter that I felt like I could accurately depict. One thing that I like about it, and I think I did really well, was the contrasting colors between the pink and the green. Those are contrasting colors, just as my faith and the feminism contrast each other. This is a series of 4 clay tiles that I made, labeled Habitation. These are the 4 houses or places that have been significant in my life, 3 of them being in past houses that we've lived in, and one of them being the lake house that we go to over the summer. One thing that challenged me with these pieces were finding inspiration. The assignment was to pick something that you like and make a tile out of it. So I chose to go a little bit deeper and choose things that were significant to me and my family and to give them to my parents for Christmas. One thing that I really like about them were the colors and how the glaze turned out. And one thing that I think I did really well were the 3D elements, whether it be carved out or built up. I think it gave it a really cool effect. This is a series of 3 prints that I made that I labeled striped. One thing that challenged me about them was them not turning out exactly how I expected and there being a lot of variation in the actual ink. But I really like how they turned out in the end and how they work as a set, alternating between vertical and horizontal stripes in the background of line-drawn portraits. One thing that I liked about it is that they ended up looking really cohesive, and I also had a lot of fun making them. I don't do a lot of print work, so this was a little bit new for me, but I think they turned out really well, and I'm very happy with them. This is an ink drawing called Flower Girl that I made a few years ago. It shows a girl with a flower behind her ear, done completely in the cross-hatching style. One thing that challenged me is that this took a lot of patience and a lot of time, but one thing that I like is the value shifts, especially on the collarbone and the jawbones and where the shadows are darker. I really like how that turned out in comparison to the lighter spots and the highlights in her face. This is an acrylic painting labeled Mint Man. One thing that challenged me with this was the detail work, especially in the hands and the rope and the letters going around. But one thing that I really like is the colors that I chose. Even though they're not as realistic, I think it's still very fun, and I had a lot of fun making this. This is an acrylic painting called What You Thinkin' About. It just shows a girl with a baseball hat looking off into the distance with that lettering above her head. One thing that challenged me about this was trying a new style, more kind of an illustrating style instead of something that's realistic, and keeping it playful and not focusing too much on the perfect details. One thing that I really like about this was the purple shadows and the overall color scheme, and how it turned out to be just a very fun, playful piece. This is Warm Still Life, oil on canvas. This is one of the first oil paintings I did, and I chose a composition of 3, a copper pot, a glass bottle, and an apple. One thing that challenged me while I was painting this was the highlights on all the different kinds of materials. There's glass, there's organic matter, and then there is metal. And all of these reflect light very differently, so capturing that was kind of difficult. One thing that I really like though is the reflection at the base of the spout of the kettle. I think that turned out really well, and also the colors that were on the apples. Overall, I think the colors flow very nicely together, and it's very easy to look at and very easy to register what these are, and I'm very pleased with it. This is a self-portrait, oil on canvas. This is one of the later oil paintings that I did after learning some of the base technical skills in the previous still life that I did. I decided I wanted to move on to something a little bit more challenging, so I chose this picture and decided to paint it. One thing that challenged me was getting realistic skin tones and also getting proportions right, especially the proportion of the face to the hand. When I was laying it out, it seemed like it was going to be incorrect, but moving on and painting it, I learned a lot about how proportions work. One thing that I really like is the composition of it being split up into sections. I think that's very interesting. And also the contrast of the light shadows or the light highlights and the darks, especially around the face, that were really challenging to paint, but I think it turned out really well. Lastly, this is a replica of Jean-Henri Fragnan's Young Girl Reading that I did a little bit earlier this summer, and it was very interesting to paint. Something that challenged me was the brighter color palette that I'm not really used to. I'm used to working in more dull colors or unsaturated colors, but these were very bright, so that was a whole new thing that I had to explore with painting. Also, the style is very different. This is in the Rococo style instead of a hyper-realistic style, which I usually oil paint in. And one thing that I really like is the blending of colors in the hair and the dramatic folds in the fabric. And I'm overall very happy with how it turned out.
Thank you for considering me for this scholarship, and I hope you enjoyed my work.